Every organism on Earth exists within a matrix of physical, chemical, and biological boundaries. These variables determine exactly where a species can live, how it grows, and the precise moment its survival becomes impossible. The science of measuring these interactions is ecology. The term was coined by German zoologist Ernst Haeckel, derived from the Greek words oikos, meaning home, and logos, meaning study. It is the study of the biological home. To study this home, ecologists organize life into a hierarchy. Individual organisms capable of producing fertile offspring form a biological species. When separated by physical or chemical barriers, they divide into local populations bound by gene flow. Multiple interacting populations form a community, and that community, combined with its physical environment, constitutes an ecosystem. At the center of this ecosystem, an individual organism is constantly pressed by 4 categories of variables: climatic factors like temperature, topographic factors like altitude, edaphic factors concerning the soil, and biotic factors, other living organisms in the same space. To map how species distribute across the globe, we cannot look at this complex system holistically. We must isolate and analytically deconstruct these 4 quadrants. We begin with the physical bounds of the aerial environment. Light is essential for photosynthesis, but it also acts as a biological master clock, regulating growth, development, and reproduction. In plants, this response to the relative length of the day is called photoperiodism. Species are categorized by strict time thresholds. Long-day plants require more than 12 hours of light to bloom. Short-day plants need less than 12 hours. Day-neutral plants show little response to specific duration, operating on separate cues. Temperature operates with similar strictness. Every physiological process is bracketed by cardinal temperatures. The species has a minimum threshold for survival, a maximum limit before proteins coagulate, and an optimum temperature where metabolic efficiency peaks. Over generations, these cardinal temperatures act as physical sculptors, molding the morphology of animal species across different geographic latitudes. Scientists track these adaptations through specific ecological rules. Bergmann's rule observes that the average body mass of animal populations increases in colder latitudes. A larger mass yields a smaller surface area to volume ratio, which helps the organism conserve internal heat. Conversely, Allen's rule observes extremity length. Mammals in warm environments develop longer ears and appendages to maximize heat radiation, while Arctic variants have shorter extremities to prevent thermal loss. These correlations persist across the animal kingdom. Wrench's rule links narrower wings in birds to colder regions. Jordan's rule notes higher vertebrate counts in fish living in low-temperature waters. Glogger's rule maps darker animal pigmentation to hot, humid climates. Organisms navigate these thermal bounds using different internal strategies. Ectotherms rely on external heat sources. Endotherms generate their own internal heat to maintain a stable baseline, and heterotherms bridge the gap, dropping their metabolic rate and adopting ectothermic behavior during periods of extreme environmental stress, such as winter hibernation. Climate functions as a physical sculptor, molding the morphology and the chemical makeup of the organism over generations. Below the atmosphere, the physical and chemical architecture of the ground presents its own constraints, known as edaphic factors. Defined by the de Kochiev equation, soil is the product of parent geology, modified by the environment, acted upon by biological influences, and matured over time. As time passes, soil matures through distinct chemical pathways. In low humidity, melanization darkens the soil with organic humus. High rainfall causes podsilization, leaching minerals into a hardpan. In freezing climates, glaciation traps unweathered material under waterlogged layers, while hot and humid zones undergo patternization, rapidly weathering down to iron-rich red clay. The resulting soil is distributed by physical forces. Gravity creates colluvial soil. Running water deposits alluvial soil. Glaciers push glacial soil, and wind scatters aeolian soil. The environment also wields elemental forces as tools of ecological design. Fire plays a vital role in removing heavy competition and returning locked nutrients back into the soil cycle. Some organisms are specifically adapted to exploit this. Pyrophilous fungi require the chemical conditions of burnt earth to grow. Several conifer species, like the pitch pine, possess serotinous cones sealed with resin. They only open and release their seeds when exposed to the heat of a forest fire. The geological stage is a shifting medium that selectively rewards specialized adaptations. Beyond the physical earth and climate, an organism must navigate the biotic environment. Here, the living organisms themselves act as the primary limiting factors for one another. This table maps the combinations of interspecies interactions developed by Burkholder in 1952. Every relationship between two populations can be categorized by a positive benefit, a negative inhibition, or a neutral zero. Positive interactions take several forms. Mutualism is a plus-plus relationship where both species benefit and contact is indispensable for survival. Proto-cooperation is also plus-plus, but not mandatory. Commensalism is a plus-zero dynamic, where one species gains shelter or food while the other is unharmed. Negative interactions are driven by resource scarcity. Predation is a plus-minus relationship, where one organism kills and consumes the other. Parasitism is also plus-minus, but the host is generally kept alive. Finally, competition is a minus-minus interaction. Both organisms expend energy fighting for light, food, or shelter, which results in population growth inhibition for both. Every living thing is trapped within this grid, negotiating daily for resources while either cooperating with or exploiting its neighbors. With these variables established, ecologists use mathematical models to quantify the absolute limits of survival. This graph charts limiting factors against population density. Biotic limitations like food supply are density dependent. As the population increases, food scarcity rises. A flood or extreme freeze, however, is density independent, affecting a population regardless of its size. In 1840, Justus von Liebig observed that biological growth is not controlled by the total amount of resources available, but by the single nutrient in shortest supply. Perfect sunlight and water mean nothing without trace magnesium. This is Liebig's law of the minimum. In 1913, V.E. Shelford expanded this logic. He demonstrated that an organism is not only limited by scarcity, but also by excess. Too much water or too much heat can be as lethal as too little. This concept is Shelford's law of tolerance. This bell curve defines biological existence. The center is the optimum zone for maximum growth. As variables shift toward critical minimum or maximum limits, the organism enters physiological stress. Past those markers lies the zone of intolerance, where survival ceases. What happens to a population that is consistently forced to the edge of this curve? Every species has an ecological amplitude, the specific range within which it can tolerate changes before it is forced to adapt. The first response to environmental pressure is the ecophene, or ECAD. An organism alters its morphology to survive, but its genetics remain identical. If returned to its original habitat, it reverts to its normal form. If the population is kept in the new environment for many generations, these physical changes become permanent. This creates an ecotype. A genetic mutation has occurred, though the organism still retains the ability to interbreed with its original population. Finally, if the isolation and environmental pressure persist, the genetic code diverges so completely that a distinct reproductive barrier forms. They can no longer interbreed. The population has crossed the threshold into an ecospecies. Ecology is the study of life's continuous negotiation with the boundaries of physics and chemistry. When the environment tightens the matrix of constraints, life is forced, biologically and mathematically, to evolve.